Hello friend, welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Kimberly.
And I am Larry.
And today we're going to be canning up some meat. Now I like to use my quart jars for canned beans, but I like to keep my pint jars filled with canned meat. We can beef and we can chicken in the raw pack method, but today we're going to be canning ground beef. And so that is not safe for the home canner to can raw. We're going to have to cook it up first. So we have about 19 pounds of ground beef, just under 9 kilos. And we're going to get started frying that up in the pan so we can pack it in the jars and start canning.
You're not going to put oil in here?
I don't think we'll need any oil. I think there's enough fat in that meat. This is what I really need Larry's help with. I don't like handling raw meat. Looking good. There, that looks good. Looks like we'll be able to cook half of it at a time. I want to break this down a little bit to get the meat in contact with the surface of the pan and then leave it to brown for a while. I'm glad we've got this started because this is going to be quite a long project. We have to get all of this meat cooked first and then put it in the jars. The processing time on the jars is 1 hour and 15 minutes, but there's quite a few steps we have to take before we get to that point. But I'm glad we've gotten started with it. So what we're looking for here is this nice brown color. I noticed that the meat in the cast iron pan is browning better than the meat that we have here in the stainless steel pan. I think it has in part to do with these sides being higher and the amount of meat that we put in here. So what I did to try to get this meat to brown better, like that meat, is I moved part of it into another cast iron pan and I removed some of the fat. It seemed like the meat in this pan was just kind of boiling in the liquid and in the fat in the bottom, but now it's starting to brown up nicely. I'm just about ready to start with the second batch of meat. Okay, so we have that first round of ground beef fried up. We're gonna get the rest of this raw meat into the pan, start frying, while we also start filling the jars with the meat that's already cooked. One of the reasons why I like canning meat for my family is because cooking meat is a very messy job. There's grease everywhere. But in this way, we're just making that mess one time, cooking up a whole bunch of meat, and then we'll have it on the pantry shelves. And it will be convenient, already cooked, ready to use in a recipe or heat up and eat. And my husband and my son both really appreciate having it available. Now I'm just going to start putting this meat into the jars.
Being canned, that meat could last for years. And I mentioned at that time that this is not likely to happen in this house, where it would last that long. And I'm right, we finished that up a while back. And very enjoyable.
And you were certainly right, because all that other meat's gone.
Right.
And it's only been, what, 2 months? I think it was 2 months since we canned up the other meat.
Yeah, I was guessing it might last 4 months, but
You were what?
No.
Guessing 4 months?
I was thinking maybe 4 months, but no, it didn't last that.
Yeah. I'm not sure how much that funnel is actually helping. So the last time we canned ground beef, my son said that the ground beef in the jar was really broken up into very fine, small pieces. So this time I've tried to keep it in bigger chunks. And I think he's going to like it a lot better, but I'm finding it harder to pack into the jars. So we've got all the meat fried up, and we've got our 16 jars that our pressure canner will hold packed with the meat. So what we're going to do now, Larry, if you'll put half a teaspoon of salt in each of the jars, I'm going to start adding hot water to the jars.
I can do this.
So the next thing you can do, Larry, these things that I've put water in, if you can just run this knife in here, this is called debubbling. You want to try to get some of the bubbles out there. Yeah, this looks good. Okay, so I might still have to adjust the water level on some of these as Larry's debubbling, but I'm going to get started on the next step, which I've got some white distilled vinegar here. I'm going to put some on a rag. And just wipe down the rim of the jars. This will help remove the greasy residue from the meat so that we can get a nice seal on these jars. So here's one that's been debubbled, it's salted, it's got water, and the rim's been cleaned. So Now what I need are my lids. Okay, first jar ready to go into the canner. Lid and the ring screwed on. Now when I screw the ring on, I'm just doing it finger tight. I'm not trying to really tighten that a lot with a lot of force and strength, just till it's finger tight. It will seal in the pressure processing in the canner. Okay, this looks like it needs a little bit more water. We got a nice assembly line going now. It's really nice to have this food on the pantry shelf already ready to go. It's good for disaster preparedness, and it's good for meal prep. And when I have this kind of meat on the pantry shelves, I find that my son will eat this rather than something like hot dogs. So I know this is a healthier product for him. Okay, I've got one extra lid, yeah? Okay, very good.
I think so.
So the next step is going to be to get some water in the pressure canner. And so I'm going to do that now so we can get the heat on and get this heating up and building up pressure. So we're going to get cleaned up and reset, and then we'll do that. Now that we have all of the jars of the cooked ground beef loaded into the canner, I've got water in here, not enough to cover the first level of jars, but enough to come most of the way up the sides of them. I've got the heat turned on. We're just waiting at this point. Now that I have a nice full plume of steam coming out of this vent, I'm just going to set a timer for 10 minutes and let that continue to vent, and then I can put the weight on and begin building up pressure. Now this just needs to continue heating up and building pressure. At our elevation, it needs to come up to 15 pounds of pressure. Once it reaches 15 pounds, then I need to start the processing time. For these pint jars, that will be 75 minutes or 1 hour and 15 minutes. If I was using quart jars, I would need to process for 90 minutes. So after the processing time is over, I'm just going to turn off the heat and let this sit and let the pressure reduce on its own. Then once the pressure is gone, I can take the lid off and remove the jars. The jars will sit undisturbed overnight, and then I can check the seals, wash them off, and put them on the pantry shelves.